So today's anime review is going to be an important one for me. This is a series that I feel has, in a certain respect, changed how I view anime and how anime is created and what boundaries anime can surpass. Today I'm going to be reviewing Puella, Magi, Madoka, Magica. This has really been a crux and a turning point for me in my anime viewing. Obviously I've read more manga than I've watched anime, I believe, and this is really, I feel like I've kind of gone up a tier in how I can appreciate anime with watching this. I mean, needless to say, before I even go into the review, I have to say that this is one of the best series generally I've ever watched. It was absolutely magnificent, and I really want to kind of really delve into it and, so to speak, deconstruct it and deconstruct my opinions of it, you know, to really go into some real depth, as this is a very, very important series, both culturally and just generally. It's a very, very important series, and it's now become a very important series to me, as I've seen anime essentially in a new light. I could appreciate anime from an analytical and artistic perspective before, but this has really pushed the boundaries and kind of linked my love for anime with my love essentially for contemporary art. As many of you may know, if you've been watching me for a while, I'm a trained, or I've studied art, and I'm a qualified artist. So basically, Puella, Magi, Madoka, Magica is a deconstructed anime that deconstructs the magical girl genre. It's being compared heavily to Neon Genesis Evangelion, which obviously preceded it. The mid-90s anime that deconstructed the mech genre. This has gone a step above, I believe, in doing so. And it centers around this young 14-year-old girl, Madoka Kaname. And Madoka is just an average 14-year-old high school or middle school girl, should I say. And she's getting, not necessarily pressured, but she's approached by a magical being called Kyubey, who wants her to enter into a contract with her in order to become a magical girl, gain powers, and fight these ominous mystical beings called witches, which are basically a manifestation of despair and hatred and everything negative in the world. That's it in its simplest form. Madoka Magica is a perfect example of postmodernism in anime. Now, postmodernism isn't really something I've talked about a lot, as I don't really talk a lot about artistic things on my channel. But postmodernism is essentially the era of art that we are currently in. If you think of artistic movements that have preceded postmodernism, you know, in the early 20th century we had surrealism, futurism, cubism, you know, all those kind of things. Postmodernism is something that's important, and the postmodernist era is something that we're currently still living in. It is actually disputed a lot by critics, who believe that we're now in a phase beyond postmodernism called postmodernism. And postmodernism, in its broadest sense, before I kind of, go into how postmodernism links with this anime, maybe if I just explain a little bit of what postmodernism is, for those of you that don't know. I mean, postmodernism is universally regarded as something that is very difficult to describe, as essentially it's undefinable, as it defines many things. But what postmodernism essentially advertises and encapsulate is a complete departure from artistic norm. Postmodernism basically states that the world that we live in is in a constant state of rejuvenation, a constant state of nothing is complete, and basically everything can reinvent itself. It also states that there is no such thing as universal truth or fact, and that fact is told or is perceived through the eye of the beholder. Universal truth or general truth is something that doesn't exist. There are many different truths, and basically truth is something that can be interpreted from one's own individual perspective. It's all about individual perspective, and if you take that into consideration, if you take that knowledge into an anime like this and use the analytical thinking and basically watch this anime from a postmodern perspective and appreciate it from appreciate that value of it, then this anime can be enjoyed tenfold, because it's so unbelievably fantastic. It's brilliant from the surface as just a general magical girl fighting action series with lots of drama and, you know, violence and things like that. That's just the surface of it. But if you strip the layers away and kind of essentially bring it down to its skeletal form and build it, you know, build it back up and, you know, analyze it that way while you're watching it, this is an absolutely, well, magical series to watch. I absolutely loved it. Without going into spoiler territory, one thing that I noticed about it that were very postmodern is visually, its visual style. This is actually the first series by Studio Shafter that I've watched, and I was massively impressed by the animation style, because it switches between animation styles. Every time basically they're fighting a witch, they have to go into what's called they go into like a vortex, like another dimension called the Witch's Labyrinth, in order to fight the witch, which is basically where the witches reside. And the animation style switches to this unusual collage-like effect, basically mixing photography and you know, different sort of artistic styles that completely contrast the standard anime style that the characters have, because the characters are very standard of just general, like, really shoujo looking anime character girls, very moe girls, and that contrast, that complete paradox and juxtaposition between the very, I don't want to say generic, but very common anime style with the backdrops and the backgrounds of the witches' labyrinths, and how you know, completely complex and surreal their look is. Just, it's absolutely breathtaking. It is absolutely amazing. Another very postmodern aspect to the show as well is its use of narrative, and how the narrative shifts very early on in the series, from being almost a generic high school drama to something that becomes extremely dark. And I love how the way this series was advertised and how the promotional packaging looks. It just looks like a very generic magical girl series, but it makes it very clear from the onset that it is not going to be one of those kind of shows. And I love how that was intentional by these creators. I absolutely love that. Again, without going into spoiler territory, one thing I want to mention is that the themes that this series deals with is the idea of reliving the exact same event in order to change the outcome of basically what the individual doesn't want. This series deals with that kind of you know, time shifting, and basically Madoka herself as a character is a very not necessarily bland in a sense, but she's restricted in who she is as a character, and that again is intentional, as there are multiple revelations in this series that basically perfectly explain why Madoka is the way she is, and why the other magical girls that she, you know, that are around her are the way they are. My favourite character in the series has to be probably everybody's favourite character, and that's Homura Akemi, who is the dark-haired girl who you can see on the cover there. She's introduced as a very stoic, quite intimidating character at first, and you're not quite sure as to whether she's a friend or a foe and where her allegiances really lie, because even though there are multiple magical girls in this series, not all of them are friends. You know, they're not part of like some super team like Sailor Moon. They'll also actively engage in battle with each other in order to kind of get the upper hand in defeating the witches, because with each witch that you defeat, you get like a prize, like this little like pendant thing, and I don't want to explain what that does because that will kind of delve into spoiler territory. But with each witch that you defeat, there is a benefit to it, so to speak. And basically, magical girls also compete with each other, and that basically makes for very dangerous conflicts between the girls, and I really like that. So that's why Homura Akemi is a character at first who you feel, I'm not really too sure about her. She might be a big foe, but her character development is on another scale. It is absolutely outstanding. Her character is just amazing. Basically, when you find out who she is and what she's doing, and basically her goals and things like that, I was just absolutely stunned. I absolutely loved her character, and the relationship between her and Madoka as well, and their revelations is again amazing. So ultimately, this is a series that has really changed my perspective of anime, because this isn't something that I'd regard as just anime or a TV show. This for me is contemporary art, and I could appreciate it on that level. And the way Shaft has dealt with this series is it's perfect. It is literally just perfect. There are very few negative things I can say about it. I mean, the animation was fantastic. I loved the music in this show. It just perfectly matched it. It was absolutely brilliant. And I love how you get to see different versions of the same characters, and how their idea of truth is completely different from another version of their character. Characters change and shift in this series, and it's just brilliant. It's amazing how a story like that can be told in as little as 12 episodes. If I really did have to kind of nitpick, and this is really kind of really nitpicking, if there was one thing I didn't like about this, it's its mild lolicon themes. In the opening, there are a few certain parts that were a little bit uncomfortable to watch, kind of given the idea that these girls are quite young, and there are a few excessive nudity parts. I didn't really appreciate that because I don't like lolicon, but as you can see from my reaction, that did not pull away from my enjoyment of this series at all. I absolutely loved it, and all I can really say now is bring on rebellion. So, wow, Puella Magi, Madoka Magica, it's absolute 10 out of 10 for me, and that's rare coming from me because I don't really like to give out that rating, because it's, there's always something bad in a series, and this is one of them series that really isn't in terms of how it's told. So yeah, thank you for watching.